So Stephen A. Smith goes on his show yesterday morning, the Stephen A. Smith Show, with special guest Udonis Haslem. And during this time, they were discussing basketball, specifically Miami Heat basketball. Stephen A. Smith made the claim that the Miami Heat desperately need a center, a big man five, to put next to Bam Adebayo. And then, coincidentally, just a few hours later, we get two massive reports on two different centers available in the trade market, possibly this offseason. We'll break down all the moving parts on this episode of Heat Digest, and we'll do it right now. So let's get to it and break down Miami's demands this offseason. Now, when I say demands, I don't mean that anyone from the Miami Heat front office or organization has come out and said, we are, by hell or high water, we are going to acquire a big man center to put at the five this up and coming offseason to go into next season with. That is not what happened. It's just a demand the team needs due to the fact that we saw them need one last season. You heard me call it for him. Nick, when he was recording videos on this channel before the NBA trade deadline, we were calling for players like Andre Drummond, Nick Claxton, just to name two of them, to be traded to the Miami Heat, for the Miami Heat to go out and make an effort to go out and get a big man to put next to Bam Adebayo. Not only just take some pressure off of him defensively, but allow him to unlock the rest of his game. Well, yesterday, the one and only Stephen A. Smith went on to his show, the Stephen A. Smith Show, with special guest Udonis Haslem, and he basically said the same exact thing. He said, Stephen A. tells UD the Miami Heat need a big man. And he goes on to say, and I quote, I agree, and Bam agrees as well. Bam knows the center role is one he can play, but there's another role he can play as power forward and be his best version. End of quote, again, from Stephen A. Smith on the Stephen A. Smith Show. And again, shout out to Emo Jimmy on Twitter for posting the quote as well as the 40-second clip of them having that conversation and discussion. But again, this is a massive piece of information, not only because the trade speculation came out referring to Walker Kessler and Mitchell Robinson, that we'll break down in just a few seconds. But again, this is exactly what I was referring to, as well as Nick was, just a few months ago during last season. It was something that we needed. We knew Bam Adebayo playing the five wasn't going to get the job done, as I do have the depth chart listed up here. It hasn't changed much since last season due to the fact that during the regular season, before the NBA trade deadline last season, we only acquired guards. We went out and we got Terry Rozier. We got DeLon Wright. We got Patty Mills. Obviously, we lost Josh Richardson, and that was a large reason we had to go out and get these players. Also, Tyler Hero was out for a majority of the year. Obviously, Kyle Lowry was not getting the job done at a high enough level. So, obviously, we had to go out and get these other big name, if you will, asterisk next to big name. Yes, I know. But again, these guards to play the position due to the fact that injuries and obviously just players not playing up to the level that we needed them, and then we never went out and filled the void at the 4 and 5 position. Obviously, we do have Jovic playing the 4, but again, Caleb Martin being our second string power forward is really not going to get the job done. Yes, he's a great player, but he lacks the size. And then obviously our backup center, Kevin Love, normally a power forward, obviously back in his heyday in Minnesota, when he was starting at the power forward and even center position, he was dominant. But again, he's much older now. He doesn't play the same brand of basketball that he did all those years ago back in Minnesota. And then obviously Haywood Highsmith is in roughly the same boat as a Caleb Martin. A great defender, a gritty player overall, but again, not the normal build you see at the power forward position. Again, the Miami Heat need a lot of help at the 4 and 5 positions, and I think a center would go a long way. But then that leaves us the question of what the heck do we do going forward? Obviously, the NBA draft is quickly approaching. It's June 22nd. June 26th is the first night of the NBA draft, where the Miami Heat hold the number 15th overall pick. Obviously, we're in a great position with that pick, but we also have the following night, on June 27th, we have the 43rd overall pick, which would be the 13th overall pick in the second round of the NBA draft. That leaves the question, do we draft an NBA big man, or do we go out and trade for one that is possibly already on the market? We'll start with the players currently possibly going to be available for the Miami Heat with the 15th overall pick in this year's draft. We'll quickly start first with this. This is the top 4 players at the center position in this year's NBA draft. Now, Donovan Clingan obviously is not going to fall to the Miami at 15. He's one of the few players we have not been able to discuss in relationship to the Miami due to the fact that he's such a high valued player in this NBA draft that hasn't really had that many high level players, at least in the sense of going into this draft. Obviously, this draft has been ridiculed day in and day out, and until it actually shows that it has a lot of talent after they are drafted, These players are going to continue to get ridiculed. This draft is going to be sold very low. But again, he's listed as the number 1 center. He'll go probably in the top 6 to 8 picks, and it will not be a surprise. 2, 3, and 4, the Miami Heat have a legitimate chance at drafting at 15 based off the mock drafts that we've broken down not only on this channel but that we've seen on social media from all the different media platforms, Yahoo Sports, The Ringer, ESPN, all Bleacher Report, all of the different sources have had 2, 3, and 4 possibly landing with Miami at the 15th overall spot, if not falling past them. So Zach Edey, the number 2 center in the country, coming into this draft. He played for Purdue. You've heard me rave about him before. You saw his stats earlier. Zach Edey, 25 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 2 assists while shooting 62% from the field. This kid was the number 1 player in the country last year in college, and you guys know how I feel about him. I've covered him in multiple videos on this channel. I think he would be great not only in the NBA, but playing alongside Bam Adebayo. He's going to give you defensively and offensive rebounding without a doubt. He's going to be able to protect the rim efficiently with block shots and the ability to alter shots. I know he's going to be a liability if you pull him outside the painted area and outside that three-point line. He's not going to be able to move laterally greatly. He's not going to be able to be a defensive stopper outside of the paint. I 100% agree. I will not argue that. Someone who's 7'4", 300 plus pounds is not going to be able to move that well. But again, at least laterally, if you put him next to the basket, he is going to be a rim presence that is going to be undeniable, and that's what we are really looking for, at least in my opinion, when it comes down to rebounding, defending the rim, and then just being, if you get an offensive rebound, be able to finish a layup, be able to dunk the basketball. That's all we're really looking for. And again, if you can do that at a high percentage as well as make the correct pass when you do see another body come at you when you catch the ball in the post, you are doing just fine, in my opinion. But again, we will see. But let's go back to the other Missy we've discussed in other videos in draft, or in mock drafts, I should say. He's going to be one of the players drafted. It's going to come down to whether or not players or teams are higher on Missy or Kellman, where we've also discussed in previous videos. It's going to be interesting. These players are bigger bodies. Obviously, Edey is 7'4", Kellman Ware is 7 feet tall, and I believe Missy is 6'11". These guys could play the game of basketball at a professional level, at a high level, and I can't wait to see what Miami does with that 15th overall pick. But again, if we don't draft a center, which is, again, a total possibility at that number 15th spot, or even at that 43rd overall spot, 13th overall in this, or excuse me, that would be the 43rd, 31st picks, and then 30 in the second round, 13th in the second round, that'd be 43. If we don't draft a big man with either of those picks, the ability to trade for one in this offseason still seems to be a very, very large chance. We'll start with Walker Kessler. Walker Kessler, the Utah Jazz could trade Walker Kessler per Jake L. Fisher. We know that name because he's working with Yahoo Sports, and he's done a great job covering the Donovan Mitchell situation as well as the rest of NBA free agency up to this point. This goes on to say, shout out to NBA Central on Twitter for posting this as well. It goes on to say, and I quote, "There appears to be a wide range of starting caliber big men available for trade. Rival teams believe Utah is willing to engage in trade talks that would part ways with Jazz second-year center Walker Kessler." Now, Walker Kessler isn't the biggest name obviously in the entire trade market, but again, he's a great center. He's only a second-year player. He's only 22 years of age, going on 23, and it seems like he's going to have a great ability at playing the game of basketball at a high level for a long time. It doesn't seem like you're going to have to ask a lot from him either. He's just going to be able to get the job done that he knows and loves to do. 8 points per game last season, 7.5 rebounds, averaging 2.5 blocks per game, 1 turnover, 65.5% from the field. Not a three-point shooter, not a big three-point shooter at least, so we're not going to highlight the fact that he shoots 21% from behind the three-point line. We will highlight the fact that Walker Kessler is 7 feet tall, 22 years old, going on 23 like I acknowledged earlier. 74% of his twos are assisted, which is great. He's catching the ball on diving to the basket after pick and rolls or setting good ball screens. He's able to finish the basket or finish the play with a basket, whether it be a layup or a dunk. His defensive box plus minus is 1.3, which is very good, and I can't wait to see how he ends up playing and whether or not, if he's traded, whether or not it's to Miami or just traded out of the Utah Jazz organization. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason. You've heard me say this multiple times, but again, Walker Kessler is just another piece to the puzzle that could be a very complex offseason for not only the Miami Heat, but a slew of teams in this NBA offseason. But again, the second big name that we got news of immediately after Stephen A. Smith's comments on his show early in the morning was Mitchell Robinson. Again, shout out to NBA Central once again. They go on to say the Knicks have contacted opposing teams about trading Mitchell Robinson per Jake L. Fisher once again. Going on to say, and I quote, Hartenstein at this moment is now generally expected to return to New York as the Knicks have contracted opposing teams about moving Mitchell Robinson, sources said. There appears to be a wide range of starting caliber big men available for trade. So a little bit of rinse and repeat from the Walker Kessler report. But again, this is still massive information as both of these names could be big name players going forward for teams, whether it be the Miami Heat or other teams in the NBA going forward. I can't wait to see how this plays out. Mitchell Robinson was an absolute demon on the backboards last season. And again, if he were to land in Miami, I think that would genuinely make the Miami Heat better. I think if either of these players landed in Miami, neither of them are major offensive threats. But again, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a defensive-minded center who can not only defend the rim, but also rebound the basketball offensively and defensively. Allow this Miami Heat offense to gain more possessions after missed shots with offensive rebounding. And again, the ability to make the correct pass when you see more than one body, and the inability, I should say, to then just put the ball quickly back up on the boards, whether it is for a layup or a dunk. The ability to make the correct pass out to the three-point line to then either reset the offense or get an open look from three. Again, I think both of these guys would be great in Miami. And again, it leaves us with the question, does Miami draft someone at 15 or even 43 in the second round? Or do we make a trade and do we go out for a Walker Kessler? Do we go out for a Mitchell Robinson? Let me know down in the comments what you guys would do when sitting at this big crossroads. Do you draft a young player? Do you go out and trade for a young player? What would you do if you were Miami? But again, that would be it for this episode of Heat Digest. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about these possible options for the Miami Heat, whether it be a draft pick in Khalil Ware, Zach Edey, or even Missy, or would you trade for someone like a Mitchell Robinson or a Walker Kessler? That'll be it for this episode of Heat Digest. I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching.